I don't think anyone a year and a half ago would have said that the worst thing that could have happened in the addiction world is a virus.
Over the past 12 months, how many times have you thought about West Virginia's opioid epidemic? Given that we've been dealing with the global COVID-19 pandemic, it's understandable if you've had other things to deal with. But the opioid problem has certainly not gone away, and in some cases, health officials say it's actually gotten worse. As we continue our series, Addicted Appalachia, Eyewitness News reporter Kenny Bass tells us about how a pandemic impacts an epidemic and what's being done to help those in need.
Underneath the surface of the COVID-19 pandemic, West Virginia's opioid epidemic is still raging like an out-of-control forest fire. But the coronavirus has dominated our lives in the past year in a way that's left little room to consider much else. Dealing with masks, tests, social distancing, working from home, staying away from family and friends, and more recently, deciding whether to get the vaccine and then trying to schedule a shot has pretty much filled up everyone's plates.
I'm sure it's been terrible for the people that have been addicted to drugs, especially opioids, and things like that. I'm sure it's made it a lot harder for them to focus. You know what I mean? And they would internalize that. It would make it a lot harder for them to stay away from their addictions, to deal with the demons that they're trying to face every day.
While just about the entire world deals with the pandemic, those suffering from addiction remain in their own private hell. But now, without many of the tools and support services they need to get on the road to recovery.
I would not want to start imagining worse things happening, because this has been devastating in terms of keeping people together, keeping people connected, keeping people able to go to their group therapy supports, their group support meetings. So this has definitely been a devastating experience, and even for just mental health, not just addiction. It's been hard on all of us as West Virginians.
Doing exactly what we've been told to do while dealing with COVID can be a massive hurdle to treating addiction. Isolation is a huge contributing factor to drug use and relapse, and isolation also happens to be one of the best ways to avoid the coronavirus.
We've always said in the addiction medicine world and addiction treatment in general that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, but connection. And the pandemic just pulled that away from us in a way that we never could have imagined. I don't think anyone a year and a half ago would have said that the worst thing that could have happened in the addiction world is a virus. No one would have. We wouldn't have put those two things together quite as directly, but it really has impacted our recovery as a state, and when we have some building back to do from here.
There is evidence of real harm caused by the pandemic to those dealing with addiction. A preliminary report from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention shows that West Virginia's reported drug overdose deaths from August of 2019 to August 2020 rose from 816 to 1,147. That's an increase of 40.6%. The picture is much the same for Kentucky and Ohio. The Bluegrass State's reported cases from August 2019 to last August rose 43.4%, from 1,307 to 1,874. For the same time period in Ohio, reported deaths went up 20.2%, 4,129 to 4,962.
One of the really inspiring things about recovery is that it requires community and it requires really close connection to others. And COVID-19, just based on the nature of the disease, really doesn't allow us to maintain that level of community and continuity with whether it's a peer group or recovery residents, a treatment program, a group in an MAT program. And so that level of that rug was really just pulled out from under so many people. And we have seen a significant increase in rates of all mental health disorders, anxiety, depression, but also substance use. And unfortunately, with the increasing trends of lethality of drugs just in the illicit drug supply, that people are passing away from overdose.
Maintaining a framework of essential service and trying to find ways to help those in need during the time of COVID has been a challenge. But mental health and addiction experts say we are starting to turn the corner.
While we have lost ground in terms of anxiety, depression, we're watching the overdose numbers. What we haven't lost ground in, that we have made incredible investments in trying to increase the number of treatment providers, increase the number of residential treatment beds, increase the opportunities for treatment, increasing recovery home, stable recovery housing. Those infrastructure supports are still there once we get through a lot of this, the urgent pandemic response, and people are ready to start seeking treatment. Those infrastructure supports will still be there, and I think that's incredibly important moving forward.
Dealing with COVID has been the top priority for the past year. The pandemic presented tragedies and challenges that we've not seen in the last 100 years. But our other problems did not go away. As we near a tipping point in vaccinations, with a promise of returning to more normal lives, the opioid epidemic will once again move to the forefront of the problems we must solve.
You know, right now, front and center is this pandemic that's taken 2,638 deaths. The pandemic will leave at some point in time, and we'll have to absolutely, even though we haven't taken our eye off the ball, we'll have to do more refocusing.
Recovery is possible. No matter what, recovery is possible. You can do it. It may take multiple tries, but you can do it. And we have helpline numbers. Our 1-844-HELP-for-WV is there. People are ready to talk to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People can start treatment now. If they're ready, we're ready for them.
I'm incredibly hopeful about the future. I think based on all the things that we've done, with regards to building that infrastructure that I've spoken to and that Commissioner Mullins has spoken to, we're really hitting the ground running as things start to open back up. Now that means that does not mean that we're out of the weeds by any means. There are still many people, hundreds and thousands of people of West Virginians out there that are suffering every day. And so our job is not done, and it will not be done for a long time. But I am hopeful that the infrastructure that we've built will put us on solid ground.
With this report on Addicted Appalachia, I'm Kenny Bass.
And thank you, Kenny. If you or someone you know is dealing with addiction and looking for help, you can call that number that was mentioned there, 844-HELP, the number 4WV. The hotline is funded by the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources. Those answering calls can assist you with a number of things, including confidential support and resource referrals, self-help groups, outpatient counseling, medication-assisted treatment, psychiatric care, emergency care, and residential treatment. And keep an eye out for our next Addicted Appalachia report as we continue to take a close-up look at the devastating crisis which has taken so many lives.
Neonatal abstinence syndrome is an issue that first began getting national attention back in 2015 when West Virginia's rate of babies born into withdrawal was close to 7 times the national average.
Now that we're seeing a slight uptick again and still at the highest rate in the entire country, Eyewitness News reporter Anna Saunders explains why this time experts on the front line say the crisis is different. And we will warn you that some of these images of infants in withdrawal may be difficult to watch.
Addicted Appalachia, sponsored by WVDHHR Bureau for Behavioral Health.
Born just days ago, he's trying to understand the world he's just been brought into. But his introduction has already been much more challenging than other babies.
Watery stools, tremors, sneezing, tongue thrusting, excessive suck, temperature even at times.
He's in the neonatal therapy unit, or the NTU, at Hoops Family Children's Hospital in Huntington. This quiet, darker section was specifically designed in 2012 for the care of infants born with neonatal abstinence syndrome, a condition caused by the mother's substance use while pregnant.
And at that time there were so many that we were unable to take some of the extremely premature babies and some of the very sick babies that needed NICU.
When we were there, 18 babies were in the unit. In 2018, nearly 5% of babies born in West Virginia were born substance exposed. In 2020, that percentage is now 6.5%. Experts say the rise is likely for the same reasons seen throughout the recovery community: fewer in-person meetings and increased isolation. But their biggest barrier has always been the same: stigma.
I found out I was pregnant, and I was in a dark place when I found out.
Lauren Brothers didn't start seeking treatment until halfway through her pregnancy.
Honestly, with addiction, it plays tricks on you, and I was thinking that I didn't really need to get any help until I was closer to the end of my delivery.
But even then, help on the neonatal floor of Hoops was still waiting for her.
And that's something you don't get in a lot of places, because you get judged some places. It's like, we're people too, but we just struggle. Everybody struggles with something.
Specialized programs were not only the game changer for her, but have been for the entire state.
Some of what we're seeing is a shift. So the babies are not as severe as they were because mom is in treatment. The crisis has changed. It's evolved. There are still a lot of babies born out there to women in active addiction. But there is also a lot of babies being born to women who are in active treatment.
And now with 16 drug-free moms and babies programs statewide compared to the original 4, the treatment doesn't end when the babies leave the hospital. The MOMS program located within the NTU supports them for at least a year after giving birth.
They'll put in a consult to me and I will go meet with them either before delivery or after delivery.
So even when the numbers are rising, so is hope.
Say hi, Mama. She's been home for a really long time now. She's doing super great, and she's just the best little baby.
Mothers like Julie Gomez see it when she looks at her healthy 17-month-old who spent the first 3 months of her life in the hospital.
I feel so blessed to be where I'm at, especially from where I was at in the beginning before I got into any program.
And as much as those moments are celebrated, not every story is one of success, highlighting the need for more programs for mothers and children across the state. Because now the DHHR also knows more about how this impacts babies later in life.
You'll hear teachers sometimes saying that it's harder for those children in the classroom than it is for kids who were not born substance exposed. Speech and language problems, sleep problems.
And for those mothers feeling the shame that's keeping them from reaching out, women who have felt it too are hoping their stories shine a light.
Because I felt that. There's people that's gone through the same stuff you're going through. It's up to you to want to reach out and get help, because it's really well worth it.
In Huntington, Anna Saunders, Eyewitness News.
The opioid epidemic and current drug crisis have had rippling effects on just about every corner of society, but one corner often overlooked: the classroom. Students are coming in after experiencing trauma and neglect at home, and teachers are having to fill multiple roles at once.
Tonight, Eyewitness News reporter Anna Saunders takes us into some of our region's classrooms, exploring this issue as teachers try to help the most innocent victims, and experts are trying to get those teachers the support they need.
Today's classroom in West Virginia.
Yeah, the mom would have fur all over her, that's right.
Masks, desk shields, giant bottles of sanitizer. The shifts and changes brought about by the pandemic evident right off the bat.
Good, that's good.
But long before COVID-19 came along, teachers in the state were already wrestling with the crisis, not visible at first glance.
I remember seeing the classroom environment shift about, I'd say, 8 years ago.
Within the last 10 years is when we've really started to see, kids that just come in and they need us.
And those timelines go right along with the CDC's major opioid epidemic waves in 2010 and 2013. And while the focus primarily stays on those experiencing addiction, those who witness it are coming into school every day, carrying with them what they see and hear and go through at home.
We have a shower. They can take showers here if they want. Our custodian is wonderful. She'll wash their clothes.
And for the teachers, when students are in crisis, teaching is no longer the first priority.
I think about if they're warm, if they have a sheet to lay on. Because I remember a little girl saying that she didn't have sheets on her bed or blankets. And I think about that all the time.
In elementary schools, it was an increase in behavioral issues that first sounded the alarms.
You see more kids now that just want to act out and they just don't know how to function in this type of situation where there's structure.
In middle school,
sometimes it's more of an emotional thing, sometimes it's more of an outburst thing.
Kelly Brose says she was in a unique position coming into public schools in 2015, already knowing the challenges ahead of her, even able to empathize on a much deeper level as she had a family member in active addiction.
These were the cards that they were dealt, and they need other people to help them deal with them. So, and we're going to do that at school.
But all three teachers will tell you it's becoming more and more emotional labor. And in 2018, a research team at West Virginia University picked up on that as well. They started with a survey and sent it out to teachers statewide, not sure if they would even get one response. They got almost 3,000.
We had teachers just pouring information into pouring out their souls. I mean, just paragraphs and paragraphs.
What the survey told them was that 72% of teachers hadn't received any addiction training, but that almost 40% of them had at least one student with a person using drugs in the home. And 35% of them said they felt burned out.
We had another teacher that said, first I have to address their physical needs, their emotional needs. I have to be these, multiple roles. And if I get in some teaching, then it's a good day.
And back in class, teachers at Big Otter Elementary in Clay County are changing it up.
They're not used to quiet. They're not used to sitting there just doing one task. Kids are used to being in motion all the time.
So welcome to Minds in Motion. For 20 minutes a day, each class at Big Otter comes into the cafeteria and participates in individual station exercises focused on different motor skills and reflexes, skills not every elementary-age child comes in with.
Once they get confident in a lot of these skills that they may not have seen before or done before, their learning level, it just picks right up.
So as the state continues to deal with the drug crisis, teachers know they will continue to see it play out in the classroom and have to meet needs that go way beyond what they set out to do.
What keeps me coming back is that I know these kids. I know their stories. I get it.
So they'll try new things. They'll learn new skills.
And I think at times I'm not making a difference, but then you have that one kid or two kids or whatever that you're like, that's what makes it worth it all.
And they'll hold tightly to the small victories to keep them going.
Good job.
In Clay County, Anna Saunders, Eyewitness News.
And that pain not just felt in Boone County, but in many places throughout the Mountain State.
Tonight, Eyewitness News reporter Danielle Dindak gets an exclusive tour of a new facility opening in Boone County that hopes to alleviate that pain and get those in need into recovery.
In the heart of southern West Virginia lies a place rich in history. Towns here tucked between the mountains, protecting its people and reminding them of the legacy of Boone County.
We are a state that is proud of our culture. We're proud of these mountains. We're proud of the mining industry.
The mining industry nearly gone, rocking the state, shattering many families, and changing Boone as many knew it.
I am a daughter of Boone County. I am somebody's daughter. I am somebody's mom. I am somebody's cousin. This is my family. This is my home.
As jobs left the area, something new, something deadly took hold: addiction. In 2019, fatal overdoses killed 9, that number doubling in 2020 to 18. But the pain caused by drugs dates back years.
Back years ago when I went to treatment, there was hardly any access at all, and so we didn't know. Like, there was a lot of us that were suffering that didn't know treatment existed, or we would make calls and you just couldn't get in anywhere.
Melanie Danielson sought treatment in 2011. At the time, she says there were 250 in-person treatment beds.
And there are a lot of people that have died waiting on a bed.
A decade later, facilities are found in 16 counties, totaling more than 1,100 beds.
There's a lot of people seeking treatment now compared to what it used to be, and the access to treatment has improved quite a bit here in the state of West Virginia.
construction for a new center underway in an area ravaged by the drug epidemic, Boone County.
Everybody knows that this is a community issue. And if we can't help those that are suffering the most in our community as a whole are going to continue to suffer. People have really come around to the idea that this is good.
The Lotus Recovery Center, a part of a larger treatment network, aims to bring comfort in comfort, transforming a vacant hotel into a 60-bed treatment center.
We'll be able to provide detox and residential treatment. So our clients can expect to be here anywhere from 30 to 60 days.
And we also want to be able to employ those that are in recovery.
The first 24/7 center in the county, an avenue for people to seek treatment when they're ready, no matter the time.
We walk up to somebody and they do commit to wanting treatment right then and there. We have to make 16, 17 phone calls before we find a facility.
Since the start of the pandemic, the county's quick response team reported a 30% spike in overdoses. The new facility, this team believes, is needed now more than ever.
We can just put them in our vehicle and bring them here, and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they'll be willing to help them out.
Things might yet again be changing in Boone County.
And so being able to bring quality treatment and easy access to a county like this can change the whole county.
As people work to pick themselves up from the pain left behind from the dwindling mining industry and growing drug epidemic.
Boone County has an amazing, hopeful future, and that's our goal.
A hopeful future opening its doors in Boone, offering jobs and a path to recovery.
And I believe that we also can rise above this issue, and the pride of West Virginia will continue to stand as a banner. We are resilient. We can make it. We are West Virginia.
And tonight's Solutions to an Addicted Appalachia. Eyewitness News reporter Danielle Dindak takes a look at alternative options doctors are offering, including cutting-edge procedures that are happening right here in Charleston. Some of life's hardest decisions are like a fork in the road. Two routes and the path we take might alter our life as we know it.
So that's the one medicine I think you give that sometimes you may have a little bit regret about giving.
Dr. Barry Mitchell says sometimes prescribing an opioid is like sending a patient down a road to the unknown.
Is the pain that I'm treating real, or can they manage without that opioid? And what are they doing with it when they leave there? Are they selling it? Are they giving it away? Are they abusing it in some other fashion?
When he first started his career 16 years ago, things were different.
We were a little more cavalier about our prescribing practices, quite honestly, in the ED. I mean, we treated pain because pain was considered what? It was considered a vital sign.
But there was a shift as studies on opioid addiction grew, and so did knowing those who battle it.
Because I've had friends and family die of overdoses. My father died of a methadone overdose 12 years ago. So, I mean, I've been touched as well as anybody has, really.
The opioid epidemic is changing the way doctors think and prescribe.
What we've seen in the last, I'd say 6 or 7 years, we've worked with WVU and the CDC, developed new guidelines on things to do before you go on opioids. And those were published and adopted by the State Medical Association. And I think we've seen a marked reduction in both opioid prescribing, overdose deaths, and diversion.
The road that once offered two options for pain treatment now offers another avenue.
Give you a choice somewhere between an opioid chronically, which isn't a great idea for people, or a large, very invasive surgery. I think that's been the biggest change, and we're getting people much more functional and keeping them really the quality of life up to where we want it to be.
Cutting-edge treatments to get people away from opioids happening in downtown Charleston with Dr. Tim Deere.
New software for the brain, new virtual reality integration, and then we are also looking at more and more ways to do things that used to be done through large, huge surgeries to change spinal disease, and that we can do through an incision of an inch or less.
And over in Huntington, it was once ground zero for the opioid epidemic.
The patient has to take their mind off the idea that I'm in pain, I need opioid. There are other medications, there are other interventions.
The pain management clinic offers alternative options, and Dr. Ghassan Mufaraj's motto, motion is medicine.
I see a lot of patients who come to me with terrible pain, like let's say back pain. I've never been to physical therapy. That's not good.
He suggests for patients to first try things like massages, yoga, and acupuncture.
They had surgery, you put them on the opioids for a couple of weeks, and that's it. That's once they see what this medicine makes them feel, they just become addicted to it. And some people hate it.
Something he says isn't discussed enough, opioids' negative side effects.
It can give you nausea, it can give you constipation, it can depress your respiration, you can overdose and die from them. So the bad side effects are a lot more significant than the little euphoria that you're getting.
Many doctors rely on a moral compass to steer their patients along the proper path.
There's always this moral pull one way or the other. It's like, yeah, you know, I don't want to give that drug because I don't want to create another problem, or, well, I don't want to withhold that drug either because I know that they're going to be miserable without it.
And with new cutting-edge treatments on the horizon, the road ahead looks a lot less bumpy.
With alternatives to opioids is something that we're fighting, but again, our toolbox is sort of limited. We need some new tools, and that's what we hope to get within the next few years.
There are times when prescribing opioids is the only option, like for end-of-life care or if you experience a trauma. But patients still have a choice, and many are seeking alternative options.
Over the past year, the way this country has chosen to react to the pandemic and the mandates handed down by government have made it especially difficult for those trying to break the chains of drug addiction. Social interaction is a vital part of their recovery process, but everyone has been told to isolate in order to contain the spread of COVID-19. Eyewitness News reporter Gil McClanahan introduces us to two men recovering from substance use disorder as they discuss how COVID has affected their battle to stay clean.
These days, Austin Sandtruck clears brush for Mo Recovery, a landscaping business in Huntington. But getting to this point in his life as a working member of society was a battle because Sandtruck suffered from an addiction to drugs. He says he started smoking marijuana when he was 11 years old because he wanted to try it. That evolved into a 7-year addiction to meth and heroin. Sandtruck entered the Lifehouse, a drug treatment center in Huntington, in March of 2020.
I can't do it on my own. I have to have help.
Lifehouse provides affordable housing and a self-help peer awareness approach to treating drug addiction. A couple weeks after entering treatment, COVID hit, shutting down meetings and leaving Sandtruck with too much time on his hands. So he says the stress of the pandemic, along with isolation from the lockdown, caused him to overdose.
For an addict, that's not very good, especially early on in recovery. And I ended up relapsing for that reason.
When you relapsed, how did that make you feel?
Oh, it felt horrible. All that guilt, shame, remorse came back to me. I don't know, just a big side of depression hit, and I knew I'd messed up.
I need that people interaction. I need that that one-on-one, you know, that closeness with people. So COVID kind of made it difficult.
Casey Edwards says he became addicted to opiates his senior year of college to deal with the stress of school. His battle lasted 8 years. Edwards entered the Lifehouse in May of 2020 in the middle of COVID. That also left him alone with his addiction.
Being isolated really is probably the hardest thing for me, because that's when I start to get up in my head and I start to think about every little thing that turns me to using in the first place.
In the very beginning, it was very detrimental and rough on us. Immediately we were told to social distance, separate, and when we did that, we had the highest relapse rate we've had in 10 years.
Which was?
12 people in a 3-day period.
Lifehouse founder and CEO Rocky Meadows says he had never seen relapse numbers like that, meaning his program had to get creative with treatment while making sure areas were sanitized and people wore masks.
And we still needed social interaction, but we'd keep some distances between each other and kept meetings in place, and we thrived through that.
Sandtruck graduated a few weeks ago from the Lifehouse program and says he has his driver's license back and has paid most of his court fines.
There's no comparison there. My worst days now are better than my best days back then.
Edwards also completed the Lifehouse program and today works for the organization, helping people who want treatment for their drug addiction get into the program.
The beginning's always the hardest part. So, I just kept putting one foot in front of the other and trusting the people around me.
It's proving that no obstacle is big enough, even a pandemic, to stop a person addicted to drugs from deciding to live a healthier life. In Huntington, Gil McClanahan, Eyewitness News.